Good morning, dear students. In this module, we will discuss and learn about the necessary aspects related to research problem by which you will be able to have knowledge in selecting and formulating research problem. The learning objectives pertaining to this module are meaning, importance and definition of research problem, components of research problem, sources and types of research problems, procedures of selecting, identifying a research problem and different steps to be followed in formulating the research problem. First and foremost one, we will like to learn the research problem meaning and importance. Selection of a research problem and defining and formulating the same is the first and foremost step in the research process. In simple words, any question researcher wants to answer and any assumption or assertion that the researcher wants to challenge or investigate can become a research problem or a research topic for his or her study. However, one should bear in mind that all questions cannot be transformed into research problems and some would be very difficult to study. In simple words, a research problem is a definite or clear expression about an area of concern, a condition to be improved upon, a difficulty to be eliminated or a trouble question that exists in scholarly literature, in theory or within existing practice, that point to a need for meaningful understanding and deliberate investigation. In the words of Brayman, a research problem does not state how to do something, offer a vague or broad proposition or present a value question. In the words of Kothari, a research problem is one which requires a researcher to find out the best solution for the given problem. That is, to find out by which course of action the objective can be attained optimally in the given context of a given environment. Now, we would like to know about components of a research problem. According to Kothari, the researcher should identify the following major components of a research problem. There must be an individual or a group which has some difficulty or has the problem. Likewise, there must be some objectives to be attained. There must be alternative means for course of action for obtaining the objectives one wishes to attain. There must remain some doubt in the mind of a researcher and with regard to the selection of alternatives. There must be some environment to which the difficulty pertains. Coming to the sources of research problems, first one is about reading. Reading of books, articles and other published sources relating to the subject matter of interest will be the basic source for identifying a research problem of one's own interest. Secondly, academic experience. The young and beginning researchers have the opportunity to have classroom lectures, discussions, seminars and discussion with the senior faculty members, thereby have ample chances to select or identify the research problems. Daily experience also one of the sources of research problem. Researchers who have research zeal or experience learn new things daily in society and who are likely to undergo new experiences also form as sources of research problems. Next one is about exposure to field visits. Some social science researchers have the opportunity to go for field visits and extension work by which they will come across some distinctive and typical research problems for further exploration and study. Consultations is another source of research problems. Discussing with the experts in the fields of specialization of the researcher's interest also form as source of research problem. Next one is about brainstorming. At times, researchers do get ideas or topics of research during brainstorming sessions, that is intensified discussions about academic and research issues with the members of a peer group or colleagues. The next source of research problem is the earlier research. Sometimes earlier research of one problem may offer suggestions for further research. In fact, purpose of most academic research is not only to solve the problem at one instant, but may suggest further research areas or topics to be undertaken to solve the problem under consideration. Finally, the intuition. Sometimes new ideas may strike one's mind like a flash, which can be formulated as research problems by the researchers to carry out research. So, having learned about the sources of research problems, now we will concentrate and discuss about the selection and identifying of a research problem. Selecting or identifying a research problem is a complex task. The topic of research or research problem must be carefully selected. This is because all the other steps or stages of the research process are dependent upon this stage. While beginners of research face the difficulty of selecting a problem in terms of lack of understanding and knowledge about how to proceed with research, experienced researchers will face the problem of how best one could select an innovative topic of research or justify that the research topic selected is not that explored and are going to be studied differently. In social science research, two types of research problems are normally studied. For example, most of the research problems in social sciences are descriptive and relational problems. When it comes to descriptive problems, they deal with the underlying purpose to describe the significance of a situation, state or existence of a specific phenomena. Such problems are often associated with revealing hidden or understudied issues by asking the questions what is. Then comes the relational problems. They suggest a relationship of some sort of. In both these type of problems, the overall purpose is to study the social life and human behavior of people living in society so as to propose or suggest strategies for the well-being of human beings. Now, we will see what are the procedures for selecting, identifying a research problem. Selection of a field of specialization is the first step in this. For example, the researcher has to choose one or two interrelated specializations in which he or she is capable of pursuing or would like to gain experience to do research. In the field of population studies, the major fields of specialization include fertility, mortality, migration, maternal and child health, nuptiality, gender studies, population economics, aging, etc. Coming to the next step in selecting of research problem, one should look into the researcher's interest. The topic must be able to keep the researcher's interest throughout the research process, since research is usually a time consuming process and involves hard work. The next procedure we have to keep in mind is a novelty and originality. The topic to be selected must be as far as possible original and innovative, so that it would be interesting for the researcher as well as add something new to the existing knowledge. Importance and urgency is another procedure which we have to keep in mind, that is, the research problem should be important for the academic pursuit as well as for human beings living in society. Likewise, relevance and significance also has to be kept in mind. The topic should contribute towards the improvement and understanding of an education, theory or practice. Likewise, the usefulness and relevance also is another procedure which we have to keep in mind. The research problem to be selected must be useful to society and to other stakeholders as well as relevant to the current scenario. Likewise, feasibility and facilities also need to be looked into before selection of a research problem. The topic of research must be feasible to do as a research work in a scientific manner. The researcher must also look into the matter of facilities such as library for review, data from the field or secondary data, time and money, computer for analysis, etc. Researchers' confidence, expertise, resources also have to be taken into consideration before identifying a research problem. The topic must be according to the skills, expertise of the researcher and also to the monetary resources. Data availability also has to be taken care before selecting the research problem. Researchers should look into the feasibility of collecting primary data from the respondents for the selected topic. In the case of secondary data, the researcher should make sure that the needed data is available in published format and also on the suitable format for this study. Next one is about a setting and a sample. The researcher should have adverse knowledge about the setting and also some preliminary information about the sample where the research is going to be carried out. Lastly, ethical issues also have to be taken into consideration. The researchers should see that the topic to be selected must not embrace or harm society or the sample respondents while collecting sensitive and private information of their lives. Finally, researchers also can take up a pilot study before selecting a problem. In the case of some typical problems to be selected, the researcher should carry out a pilot study so that he or she can understand the feasibility of taking up the final study. Having known these things, in the words of Krishnaswamy and Ranganathan, the overall guideline behind the selection of a research problem is: select a feasible and researchable problem which is interesting to you and within your competence and manageable within the available time and resources, and at the same time has some importance and social relevance and for which facilities are available. Now, we will try to discuss about the points to be taken care while selecting a research problem. First of all, subjects which are overdone should not be normally chosen. Likewise, average researchers better not to choose controversial topics and are difficult ones. Too narrow or too vague problem should be avoided. The chosen subject should be familiar and feasible to the researcher. The topic should be of significance and importance in the particular field of specialization of the discipline academically as well as to people living in the society. And lastly, cost and time factor as well as experiences, qualifications of researcher must be in accordance with the problem at hand. Next step is about formulating the research problem. It is also known as defining the problem as well as a statement of the problem. The problem to be investigated should be clearly defined, stated in order to disseminate the irrelevant data with the relevant ones, to keep a track and make a strategy, formulate objectives, choose research design and lay down boundary limits. In the words of Whitney, defining a problem means to put a fence around it, to separate it by careful distinction from like questions found in related situations of need. Now, we will try to discuss the major steps while formulating the research problem. Of these, number 1, define or state the problem in a general way. The research problem selected should be stated in a general way, keeping in view of some of the scientific and intellectual interest, theory on which investigation is to be based. Next one is preliminary reading and discussion with peers, research guide or subject expert, observation in the field, pilot study, etc. would be helpful. At this stage, the problem may be somewhat ambiguous. The second step in formulation of problem is understanding the nature of the problem. The researcher should understand its origin and nature clearly, and also should think and discuss with others about its origin and all the related points to the topic. At this stage, the researcher is required to describe the background of the study, its theoretical basis and underlying assumptions, and thereby state the problem in a concrete, specific and if possible even workable questions. Likewise, through this step, the researcher is able to eliminate those aspects which are not well related to the problem and instead select aspects of the problem which the researcher feels passionate about and can be managed within further experience. The third step to be followed for formulating of research problem is surveying the earlier literature. Undertaking a literature survey is very much essential for formulation of the research problem. The major focus should be understand the theoretical developments taken place that are related to the research problem under consideration. One can also look into similar studies so as to comprehend how other researchers have dealt with similar problems, the settings, where the problem were studied and major findings. This would be much helpful to the researchers in further polishing the research problem precisely, and in turn would be useful to determine the boundaries of the project at hand. At this stage, the researcher may be able to develop preliminary theoretical conceptual models related to the research problem. The fourth step in the formulation of research problem is developing the ideas through discussions. Discussion about the research problem with others further enhances the knowledge of the researcher. Different ideas will be developed with such discussions, since the researcher by the time would be somewhat familiar with the problem due to review of earlier literature. Here, discussion with others can be said to be an experience survey. In the case of young researchers, the research supervisor or guide is the major person with whom one can discuss the research problem, and also with other senior faculty and or experts who have knowledge in similar topics. Besides these, experts who are interdisciplinary in nature if needed. Through such discussions, the researcher can understand the scope of the study and thereby plan the study meticulously. The next step in the formulation of research problem is rephrasing the research problem. At this stage, the researcher should try to rephrase the problem into a working proposition and thereby develop a suitable title. This is possible because by the time the researcher will be well acquainted with the nature of the problem and the environment in which it is going to study. Further, the researcher is also competent to define the technical terms, phrases related to the problem, raise research questions and working hypothesis. At the end, the researcher should also consider or state the following before rephrasing and finalizing the research problem. They are the basic assumptions, the criteria for the selection, suitability of time period and sources of data available, and the scope of limitations or limits for the study. The formulation of research problem ends with framing of objectives. Strictly speaking, the formulation of the research problem ends with the formulation of objectives, since it is closely related with the rephrasing of the problem. At this stage, objectives may be spelled out as main objective and sub-objectives. The main objective relates to the overall thrust of your study, whereas the sub-objectives are related to specific aspects of the topic, that is research problem, that the researcher wants to investigate. The objectives are mostly based on research questions raised, but generally stated in action oriented phrases such as to study, to find out, to ascertain, to determine, etc. One has to make a mention in the objectives about the setting wherein and among whom the study is going to be conducted. The objective should be expressed in such a way that the wording clearly, completely and specifically communicates the researcher's intention in the stakeholders or academic community. Now, I would like to give an example of formulation of the research problem. Let us suppose that a research problem is a broad general way is as follows. For example, reproductive health behavior of women. In this form, there are certain ambiguities such as what is reproductive health behavior, who are young married women, what is the setting or where the study is going to be conducted, whether to only study the various aspects of reproductive behavior of women or look into the patterns, differentials and determinants of reproductive behavior. Now, based on preliminary understanding of the problem and discussion with the research supervisor or experts, the research problem has been further stated as reproductive health behavior of young married women. Then comes taking into consideration a review of literature and developing ideas through discussions. The research problem is rephrased as below with some related questions. For example, the research problem may be rephrased as determinants of reproductive health behavior of young married women in an underdeveloped rural setting of Tamil Nadu. Followed by the questions. For example, question number 1 will arise, what is the magnitude of different reproductive health behavior aspects exist among young married women, namely menstruation, age at marriage, maternal health care, fertility, acceptance of contraception and reproductive morbidity. Question 2 is likely to be, are there any differentials exist among the various aspects of reproductive health behavior across their socio-economic, cultural and other factors. Question 3 is likely to be, what are the major determinants of each of these aspects of reproductive health. And with this sort of formulation, at the next stage, the researcher has to explain clearly terms like age at marriage, maternal health care, that is antenatal, natal and postnatal care, fertility, adoption of family planning methods and reproductive morbidity like obstetric and gynecological morbidity. The researcher has also thought of the data to be collected, that is primary data in this case, with young married women who are in the age group of 15 to 29 years in an underdeveloped rural setting. Finally, based on the research problems related, the researchers can formulate suitable general and specific objectives so as to carry out research in a scientific manner. In sum, in this module, a detailed discussion is made about the basics of research problem and its related aspects like meaning and importance of research problem, components of research problem, sources of research problems, procedures of selecting or identifying research problem, and finally formulating the research problem. Thank you.